In 2012, Charlie Craig and David Mullins, a gay couple, walked into Masterpiece Cake Shop in Denver, Colorado. They wanted to order a cake for their upcoming wedding. Jack Phillips, the owner of Masterpiece Cake Shop, refused to bake the cake on the basis that it went against his Christian beliefs. The couple then filed a complaint with the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, arguing that these actions were a violation of Colorado's anti-discrimination laws. This led to a lawsuit which ended with a ruling in favor of Craig and Mullins, and the cake shop was ordered to change its policies in order to accommodate gay couples and everyone else. After unsuccessfully appealing this decision, Masterpiece Cake Shop then petitioned the United States Supreme Court to review the case, which they agreed to do and will do very soon. And the question that the Supreme Court has to ponder is, are wedding cakes and perhaps other products an example of free expression? And if they are, is requiring business owners to create something that they feel violates their personal or religious convictions a violation of the First Amendment? Hi, I'm T1J.
Follow me.
So this is a very interesting case to me because usually I can pretty quickly figure out how I feel about an issue. But as a person who is a strong supporter of both free speech and social justice, I found myself initially going back and forth on this one. Now, from a non-legal personal standpoint, I'd like to acknowledge that Jack Phillips, the owner of Masterpiece Cake Shop, is being a monumental douchebag. And I've said many times that I don't buy this whole, it's just my religious beliefs. I think that people use their religion as a scapegoat for their own bigotry. Just because you disagree with someone's lifestyle doesn't give you a license to treat them like a second-class citizen. And I'm pretty sure this idea is like in the Bible. Yeah. It is. But of course, being an asshole isn't and shouldn't be illegal. And it's important for us as a nation to set reasonable legal standards to help us analyze future cases. So one of the major arguments in favor of the cake shop is basically they're a private business. They can do whatever they want. This is not a good argument. Private businesses cannot do whatever they want. For example, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 makes it illegal for businesses open to the public to discriminate against employees or customers based on religion, nationality, or race. This is why you don't see white-only facilities anymore. Not because of the kindness of people's hearts, but because it's literally illegal. You may have seen a sign in some places that says something like, "We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone." But in reality, there are limits to the reasons a business can give for denying service to people. In general, I think this argument is mostly disingenuous, because people seem to be okay with a business doing whatever they want as long as whatever they want is something they agree with. A lot of people on both the left and the right were exposed earlier this year when a theater in Texas had women-only screenings of the film Wonder Woman. Many progressives used the "it's a private business" line while at the same time arguing that a business should be forced to make a wedding cake for a gay couple. And in the same way, many conservatives and shitlords were outraged about the Wonder Woman screening while at the same time siding with the cake shop. Now, there are some people who think that we shouldn't have anti-discrimination laws at all. And that sounds preposterous to me, but it's something we'll have to talk about another time. So the debate is not about whether businesses are allowed to discriminate against people. They aren't. I mean, there are still a bunch of states where sexual orientation and gender identity isn't protected, but to me that seems like an inconsistency that should be corrected rather than an exception to the rule. So the real question, or at least the first real question, is should business owners be forced to create expression that conflicts with their personal convictions? It's generally accepted that the First Amendment not only protects your right to freely express ideas, but also protects you from being compelled to express ideas you don't agree with. Outside of business, this is fairly straightforward. Most people would agree that being forced to say or express something under threat of harm or legal consequences would be a violation of your rights. Apparently, some people don't think this applies to standing for the national anthem, but I digress. Even in business, though, when you think about it, the same thing often applies. For example, I have a lot of friends that are tattoo artists, and there are some tattoos that they just flat out refuse to do for various reasons, including personal convictions about what's appropriate. Also, if it's just a really stupid tattoo. And I feel like most of us would agree that they should have the right to do that. Correct me if I'm wrong. On the flip side, though, I think it would be less justifiable if, like, the cashier at Walmart refused to ring up your groceries because they disagree with your lifestyle. So that brings us to the next question. Is baking cakes a form of expression? The Supreme Court is going to have to define a line between what counts as speech and what doesn't. Otherwise, someone could argue that any action from checking out groceries to paying your taxes is a form of expression. So if baking wedding cakes isn't a form of expression, then this whole thing falls flat. But I think you could make an argument that it is. Like if a Nazi came into your bakery and was like, I want you to make me a cake with a swastika on it, don't you think the baker should be able to say no? It's worth noting that there was a similar case in 2013 where a wedding photographer refused to document a lesbian wedding. And I would say that photography is clearly a form of expression. However, the New Mexico Supreme Court ruled that laws banning discrimination applied to creative professions and any business that's open to the public. And I think this case illuminates the crux of the issue for me. The difference between making a cake for a Nazi and making a cake for a gay couple is that the anti-discrimination law specifically references sexual orientation. There is no law specifically protecting Nazis. So going back to my tattoo artist example, it would be okay for an artist to say, no, I'm not gonna tattoo this dick on your forehead, bro. Like, I don't think the person would have much of a case if they took the tattoo shop to court. However, if the tattoo artist said, I'm not gonna tattoo you because you're black, that's a straightforward violation of anti-discrimination laws, regardless of its restriction of the artist's free expression. Imagine if Jack Phillips put a sign outside of his door that said, we only make wedding cakes for heterosexuals. To me, this is almost exactly the same as putting out a sign that says, we don't serve black people. And this is why the court in Colorado, as well as the one in New Mexico, ruled in favor of the couples. Because those are 2 of the 20 states that have laws that protect against discrimination based on sexual orientation. However, there is no such protection in federal law, which may affect how the Supreme Court judges the case. As implied before, I think there should be, but there just isn't. At the same time, the actual question that the Supreme Court is going to be reviewing is as follows: whether applying Colorado's public accommodations law to compel Phillips to create expression that violates his sincerely held religious beliefs about marriage violates the free speech or free exercise clauses of the First Amendment. So I feel like this implies that they're going to look at the case within the context of Colorado law, which, as I said, does include protections for gay people. And if they do that, I feel that they must rule in favor of Craig and Mullins. When you make your business open to the public, you tacitly agree to serve all comers from any race, religion, and in places like Colorado, sexual orientation and gender identity. And by the way, that would make women-only screenings of films a problem as well. Your personal convictions and even your right to free expression simply does not override the rights of others to not be discriminated against. That's just me though. What do you think? Thank you for watching my video. Let's check the voicemail.
Hello T1J, you're amazing. So in response to all of the Me Too messages, I wanted to ask your opinion. I think I personally, and I have friends who shared experiences of being sexually assaulted, as a way of highlighting the fact that men have predominantly committed these crimes and that victims extend beyond just cis females, right? So transgender females, men, whoever it is, victims are victims, and the crime is much bigger than it is if we, say, focused on one demographic. Do you think that this contribution to the conversation pushes the sort of dialogue forward, or do you think this is another situation in which we, myself especially, as men, should learn to not contribute or shut up? Thank you. You're amazing. Bye.
So I don't think that telling men or anyone to not contribute or to shut up is fair or useful, especially people who have experience with sexual harassment and sexual assault. But there's a few layers to this. First of all, you want to make sure you're not slipping into whataboutism, which is basically when someone is talking about a problem and instead of reacting to that problem, you say, well, what about this other problem? All this does is derail the conversation and shifts the focus away from the initial subject. It's a pretty shameful technique. It's possible for 2 issues to be similar but still different. A terrorist attack and a guy killing someone because they owe him money both involve homicide, but it would be ridiculous to say a victim is a victim and we should talk about all homicides in the same conversation. No, the context is different and the solutions to these problems will require different approaches. I don't think that anyone involved in the hashtag #MeToo campaign made the claim that cis women are the only people who can be victims of sexual harassment or sexual assault, because that's obviously not true. But the context of sexual assault against women is different from the context of sexual assault against men. They're both problems and we should talk about both of them, and maybe some of the solutions will be similar, but also some of them will be different, which means that sometimes we need to discuss each issue separately. And the same thing goes for trans women versus cis women. The context is different and will require different conversations. And I'm a little suspicious of this line of dialogue to begin with, because it seems like the only time anyone wants to talk about sexual assault of men is when we're already talking about sexual assault of women. If you want to talk about male victims or trans victims or anyone else, then do it. it. Do it now. Don't wait until other people are talking about their experiences and then talk over them. But thanks for calling. If you want to send me a question or a comment, call the number on your screen and leave me a voicemail. And maybe I will respond to it in a future video. If you like that video, please hit the like button. And if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button for more videos like this one. And also ring that notification bell to make sure you never miss a video. Do it for me. And if you want to support me and my channel, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. My patrons are the primary reason I've been able to be a full-time YouTuber and make all these great videos for you. But I have so many more goals, and I think this channel has so much more potential, and I can't do it without your help. So thanks once again to my stunning patrons. And remember, stay Heiko.